"Pack your bags, old man. I want you out of this house by Friday." My son-in-law said it right to my face, in my daughter's kitchen, while she stood 3 feet away and said nothing. I nodded once, walked back to the guest room, and started making calls. By Thursday, I'd signed the papers on a $620,000 house across town, paid in full, no mortgage, no asking permission. I moved out Friday morning like he asked. I just didn't go where they expected. The diagnosis had come on a Tuesday, which somehow made it worse. Tuesdays are supposed to be ordinary. Prostate cancer, stage 2, treatable. The oncologist at Piedmont Hospital was calm and practical about it, the way good doctors are when they've delivered the same news 1,000 times. Surgery first, then monitoring. Excellent prognosis. Most men your age, he said, live another 20 years after successful treatment. I was 64 years old. I'd built a plumbing supply company in the Atlanta suburbs over 32 years, sold it 3 years prior for $6.8 million, and spent the time since playing the role of modest retiree. My daughter knew I'd sold. She thought the number was closer to $2 million, which is what I told her. Old habit. I learned young that the moment people know how much you have, they stop seeing you and start seeing the balance sheet. The drive home from Piedmont that Tuesday took 40 minutes. I spent it thinking about the test I'd been running for 18 months. My daughter Annette is 41. Smart, efficient, good with numbers the way her mother was. Her husband Garrett sells commercial real estate and does well enough by anyone's reasonable standard. They have 2 boys. My grandsons, Theo, who is 9, and Cody, who is 6. The 4 of them live in a 5-bedroom house in Alpharetta that I helped them buy 4 years ago. I gave Annette $80,000 toward the down payment and signed paperwork I told her was just for the tax records. She signed without reading it, the same way her husband would later sign things without reading them, which tells you something about that household. 18 months before the diagnosis, I'd moved in with him. My story was simple. I'd gotten too comfortable in my condo. The place felt too quiet since my wife Barbara passed, and the money from the business sale had gone faster than expected between taxes, a bad investment, and some health costs. I needed to cut expenses. Could I stay for a while? Annette said yes immediately. Garrett said yes 3 seconds later, which was 1 second longer than it took him to calculate what my monthly contribution would be. I paid them $2,200 a month, cash in an envelope, which I handed to Garrett on the first of every month. He always took it the same way, folded it once without counting, slid it into his shirt pocket. Never said thank you after the first month. Never once said thank you after the first month. Never once said thank you. I took the smallest bedroom, the one that shared a wall with the laundry room. I ate what they ate, watched what they watched, tried to stay small and grateful and unobtrusive. I was running an experiment. I needed to know if my daughter loved her father, or if she loved the version of her father who had something to offer. I had my answer by month 4. By month 18, I had documentation. The Tuesday I came home from Piedmont, Annette was picking up Cody from school, and Theo was at baseball practice. Garrett was home early, which was unusual. He was on the back patio with a beer, phone, face up on the table beside him, looking at something I couldn't see from the doorway. I told him about the diagnosis over the kitchen island. Treatable, I said. Surgery in 6 weeks. Excellent prognosis. He nodded the way people nod when they're listening to traffic reports. That's rough, he said. You'll want to make sure your doctors are in network. He went back to his phone. That evening at dinner, I told Annette. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand, and her eyes went wet, and I thought for a moment I'd been wrong about everything. Then Garrett said from behind his glass of wine, "Good thing you caught it early," and changed the subject to a development project he was bidding on in Buckhead. Annette released my hand and turned toward him. And that was the end of my cancer diagnosis as a dinner conversation topic. I slept poorly that night, not about the cancer, about what I'd seen. 3 nights later, I got up for water at 11:30. Their bedroom door was closed, but the house was small and the hallway carried sound. I wasn't trying to listen. I was just there. Garrett's voice first, low and flat. "We need to talk about your father." Annette, quieter. Can I wait until? No. I've been thinking about this since Tuesday. If his health is going away it sounds, this is going to become a situation. I cannot have a sick old man in this house long term, Annette. I cannot do that. Silence. He contributes. He's not. He contributes $2,200 a month. This house cost us $4,000 in mortgage, plus utilities, plus everything else. He's not covering his keep, and now he's going to need medical appointments, and God knows what else. What happens when he can't drive himself? What happens when it gets worse? The doctor said it's treatable. They always say that. His voice dropped further. I'm telling you, I want him out before the surgery, before it becomes a crisis. Tell him the guest room is being converted. Tell him whatever you want. But I want him gone. More silence, long enough that I started walking back toward my room. Then I heard my daughter's voice, very quiet. I'll talk to him this week. I closed my door without making a sound, sat on the edge of my bed in the dark. The laundry room hummed through the wall on a delayed cycle. 18 months. I had my answer. I did not wait for Annette to talk to me. I had things to do first. The next morning, I opened the private banking app I'd kept off my phone's main screen for 2 years. The balance on the main account was $5,240,000. A secondary account held another $1,380,000. There were also 2 brokerage accounts I checked separately, totaling just over $710,000. The business sale had netted $6.8 million after taxes. 3 years of careful, boring investing, index funds, municipal bonds, a few dividend-paying stocks my father would have recognized, had grown that to just under $7.5 million. I'd been living on distributions, replacing what I spent, staying flat. I could have bought a house anywhere in metro Atlanta without blinking. I searched listings that morning while Garrett was at work and Annette was at her yoga class and my grandsons were at school. Sandy Springs interested me. So did Dunwoody and Brookhaven. I settled on Brookhaven. Good neighborhood, walkable, 12 minutes from Piedmont where I'd be getting my surgery. I bookmarked 6 properties. I called my attorney, a man named Edward Holt, who'd handled my business sale and estate documents. I'd worked with Edward for 19 years. I need to update my estate plan, I told him. Full review, and I need to move fast on a real estate purchase. Cash, quick close. How fast? Before Friday. He paused. That's aggressive. I know. I also need you to pull out the loan documents from 4 years ago, the $80,000 advance to my daughter. He found them while I waited. Promissory note, dated April 2021. Principal $80,000, 5% annual interest, 5-year term. Maturity, April 2026. He paused again. You have an acceleration clause. I know I do. Do you want to invoke it? Not yet. Pull the file. I'll be in Thursday morning. Garrett was the one who finally said it to my face, which I respected more than I expected to. He came home Wednesday at 6, poured himself a drink, and came to find me in the guest room where I was reading. He knocked on the open door. You got a minute? I set down my book. He stood in the doorway with his glass, not coming in, like the threshold was a line he hadn't decided to cross. He looked like a man who'd been rehearsing. I want to be straight with you, he said. This isn't working, having you here. We've got a routine with the boys, and Annette's dealing with a lot at work, and with your health situation. I think it'd be better for everyone if you found your own place. We'll give you until Friday to get organized. He said it cleanly. No cruelty in the delivery. Just a man who wanted something done and had decided the most efficient approach was directness. I understand, I said. He waited, maybe for an argument. When I didn't give him one, he nodded once and left. I picked my book back up. Couldn't tell you what page I'd been on. The next morning, I drove to Edward's office in Buckhead. We spent 3 hours together. I updated my will. The new version left the bulk of my estate, $5 million, to a donor-advised fund I'd established with the Community Foundation for Greater Atlanta. distributable to small business development programs, and children's literacy nonprofits. The remaining assets were restructured into a trust for Theo and Cody, accessible at $25 for education, at $30 for distribution. Annette and Garrett received a specific bequest of $100,000 total. Not each. Total. That afternoon, I called a real estate agent named Beth Calloway, whose name I'd gotten from Edward. I told her I was looking in Brookhaven, budget up to $650,000, cash purchase, quick close. Her voice shifted immediately into a different register, the one reserved for buyers who don't need to wait for financing. She showed me 4 properties the next morning, Thursday. The third one was a Craftsman on a corner lot built in 2017. 3 bedrooms, home office, updated kitchen, screened back porch. The sellers had already relocated to Charlotte, listed at $615,000. I made an offer at full ask that afternoon, cash, 10-day close. Beth called back within 2 hours. Accepted. Friday morning, I was up at 6. The movers arrived at 8. I'd been packing quietly for 3 days, which in practice meant repacking. I'd never fully unpacked in 18 months. Some part of me always knew this room was temporary. Annette came downstairs at 8:15 and found 2 men carrying boxes through her front door. She stood in the kitchen doorway in her robe, watching. Her face went through several things in quick succession. "Dad, where are you going?" "Brookhaven. New house. I closed today." I handed her an envelope. "This month's contribution, last one." She looked at the envelope without taking it. "You bought a house?" "Closed yesterday, technically. Keys this morning." I set the envelope on the counter. "Tell Garrett I was out before Friday like he asked. I made good time." She flinched. "He told you what he said to me." "He told me himself, face to face. I actually appreciated that." I picked up my coat from the hook by the door. "The boys are still asleep. Tell them Grandpa moved to a new place and they can come visit when things settle down." She didn't stop me. I didn't expect her to. The new house smelled like fresh paint and a family I'd never met. The movers were done by noon. I tipped them generously, made coffee in my new kitchen, and sat on the screened porch listening to the neighborhood establish itself around me. A dog barking 2 streets over. Sprinklers, the particular quiet of a Thursday morning when everyone who lives in a house has already left it. My phone showed 4 missed calls from Annette by 2 o'clock. I didn't answer. I had my surgery at Piedmont on a Thursday 6 weeks later. The procedure went as planned. The surgeon called it a clean resection, favorable margins, no lymph node involvement. He expected full recovery. Nobody from Annette's household came. I had a friend from the old business, Leon, who sat with me pre-op and picked me up after. He'd known me for 30 years and didn't ask questions I couldn't answer. While I was in recovery, Annette had left 3 voicemails and a text that said simply, "I should have been there. I'm sorry." I listened to the voicemails once and didn't respond. The calls from Garrett started 8 days after I moved out. 5 the first day, 3 the second, then a gap, then 9 calls on a Saturday. I let all of them go. I watched the screen light up and counted. On a Tuesday, 22 days after I'd left, I drove to Edward's office. "Invoke the acceleration clause," I said. He drafted the demand letter that afternoon. $80,000 in principal, plus 4 years of compounded interest at 5%. Total due $97,300. Payable in full within 90 days. The letter went out certified mail on Wednesday morning. Garrett signed for it Thursday. Annette called me 11 times that day. I answered the 12th. "Dad." Her voice was thin. "We need to talk about this letter. I thought you'd call about it. You know we don't have that kind of money liquid. The mortgage, the boys' school, everything." "I know." Silence. "Then were you planning this when you moved in, was this a plan?" I let the question sit for a moment. "I came to live with you because I wanted to spend time with my grandsons and see whether you and Garrett were the kind of people worth leaving something to. You showed me who you are. I moved out. The loan is a separate matter. It's always been a separate matter." "Dad." "You have 90 days, Annette. Talk to your husband." I hung up. They went to 3 banks in 2 weeks. I know because Edward's paralegal tracked the inquiry history through channels I won't detail here. Each bank came back with the same problem. There was an existing lien on the Alpharetta property that preceded any home equity lending. The lien was mine. $80,000 of original principal, now $97,000 with interest and fees. Until that was cleared, the house wasn't collateral for anything. Garrett called a real estate attorney and got 45 minutes of expensive confirmation that he had no legal options. My estate was mine to distribute as I chose. My loan was legally enforceable. My demand was properly documented. There was no fraud, no undue influence, no grounds for challenge. They started selling things. I heard about it from Leon, who lives in their neighborhood. Annette listed 2 pieces of furniture on Facebook Marketplace the same week the demand letter arrived. Then her SUV, a 3-year-old Lexus replaced with a used Honda. Garrett sold his golf clubs, which Leon found particularly satisfying to report. The vacation they'd booked to Hilton Head was canceled, deposit lost. Their social circle registered the shift the way those circles always do, through tone and proximity before explicit conversation. Couples stopped making plans. Invitations thinned. Someone at their church who knew my attorney mentioned, very casually, that the Harrington family situation was not what it appeared to be from the outside. The story that got around was accurate in its outline and brutal in its implications. A 64-year-old man, recently diagnosed with cancer, had been told to leave his daughter's house, and it turned out to be worth more than $7 million. My grandsons were the part I hadn't fully planned for. Theo called me 5 weeks after I moved out, from his mother's phone, in the careful voice of a 9-year-old who has been briefed but is going off script. "Grandpa, are you okay? We haven't seen you." "I'm okay, buddy. How's baseball?" "We won Saturday. I got a double." "A double? Look at you." A pause. "Mom cried last night. She tries not to let us see, but Cody told me." I said nothing for a moment. "Grandpa, did we do something, me and Cody?" There it is. Same question every time in every family, landing on the kids who had nothing to do with any of it. "No," I said, "you two did everything right. This is between the grown-ups, and it has nothing to do with you or how I feel about you. Okay?" "Okay," he said, not entirely convinced. After he hung up, I sat in my home office for a long time. Then I called Edward. "Set up the trust formally," I said. "Full documentation, $1 million each for the boys, accessible at 25. You want to move on that now?" "I want it done before the end of the month." "Done." I also called Leon and asked him to let me know the next time the boys had a baseball game. Annette arrived at my door on a Saturday, 61 days into the 90-day window. She came alone. No Garrett. She rang the bell and I watched her through the sidelight for 10 seconds before I opened it. She looked like she'd lost sleep in a systematic way, the kind that shows up not in circles but in a general flatness of expression. She was wearing jeans and a plain jacket, no jewelry. For Annette, who had always maintained a particular standard of presentation, it was remarkable. "Can I come in?" she said. I stepped back and let her. I made coffee. We sat at my kitchen table. For a while, neither of us said anything useful. She looked around at the house. The high ceilings, the porch, the kitchen she probably registered as nicer than hers, and I could see her assembling the picture she'd been missing. "Garrett didn't come," I said. "I asked him not to. This is between you and me first." She wrapped both hands around her mug. "I want to say something before anything else. Not about the money. Before we get to any of that." I waited. "You were in our house. You told us you had cancer, and I sat at that table and let Garrett change the subject, and then I agreed to ask you to leave. Not because I didn't love you, because I was afraid of him being angry and I thought it would just be easier." She stopped. That's who I'd become. Someone who chose easy over her own father. And I'm ashamed of that in a way that doesn't have anything to do with what you're worth. She was crying by then, not performing it, just leaking steadily the way people do when they've been holding something in for weeks. I looked at her for a long time. Your mother would have something to say about all of this, I said finally. She laughed short and wet. She'd have said something about Garrett 3 years ago. She would have. We sat with that for a while. Then I pulled the folder from beside my chair and put it on the table. She looked at it but didn't reach for it. Here's what I'm willing to do, I said. The loan. I'll reduce the demand to $50,000 what you have liquid. Pay it, and the balance is forgiven. That ends it. She exhaled slowly. There are other conditions. I opened the folder. You and Garrett attend couples and individual therapy, both of you, for a minimum of 6 months. I want to see confirmation from a licensed therapist. Not a friend, not a pastor, an actual licensed therapist. Monthly. She nodded. The boys' trust is already set up. $2 million total, one each. Available at 25. You and Garrett have no access to those funds, ever, under any circumstances. She nodded again. My estate goes primarily to charitable organizations I've already designated. You and Garrett will receive $100,000 combined, upon my death, as a specific bequest. That's final and not subject to discussion. She looked up. 100,000, combined. Yes. She was quiet for a moment. How much? I mean, what is the total? It doesn't matter what the total is. The terms are the terms. She nodded a third time, slower. What about will you see the boys? I softened slightly, which I hadn't planned. I went to Theo's game last Tuesday. Sat in the third row, he didn't see me. She looked at me. He never mentioned. He didn't know I was there. I closed the folder. I'd like to see them properly. Supervised, structured, on my schedule. If you and Garrett can show me over 6 months that you're doing what you said you'd do, we revisit the arrangement. The boys had nothing to do with this. They don't lose a grandfather because their parents made bad choices. She pressed her lips together, nodded. And Garrett apologizes to me directly, in person. No letter, no phone call. He looks me in the eye and says the words. She didn't hesitate. Okay. We finished our coffee. Before she left, she stood at my front door and looked back at me the way Annette used to look at me when she was small, when she'd done something wrong and was waiting to find out the shape of the consequence. Are we going to be okay? She asked. You and me? I don't know yet, I said. Ask me in 6 months. It was honest. She seemed to appreciate that. Garrett came 3 days later, a Tuesday again. He sat across from me at the same kitchen table and said what he needed to say in the same direct way he'd told me to leave. No performance, no excess, just a man doing what he'd been told needed doing. He said he'd been raised to believe that a man who couldn't provide didn't deserve respect, and that he'd applied that belief to me without examining it, and that he'd been wrong. He said he'd been wrong about other things too, but that he'd work on them in the appropriate setting. I accepted the apology. I didn't tell him it was enough because I wasn't sure yet, but I accepted it. The first structured visit with Theo and Cody was at a park near my house on a Saturday in October. I brought a baseball and 2 gloves. Theo is 9 and has an arm that would have made his grandmother very proud. Cody is 6 and mostly wanted to find bugs under rocks, which I was happy to facilitate. They didn't ask about what had happened. Kids that age fill in gaps with their own logic and then leave it alone. Theo told me about his teacher. Cody told me about a show he wasn't supposed to be watching but had seen at a friend's house. I pretended not to be scandalized. We ate hot dogs from a cart near the parking lot. When Annette picked him up, she stood by the car and gave me a look I couldn't entirely read. Somewhere between gratitude and grief. I raised a hand. She raised one back. The drive home was quiet. My house was quiet. I sat on the screened porch as the light went flat and orange and thought about what I'd spent 3 years building and testing and what I'd learned. The money was never the point. I'd known men who died rich and empty and men who died with nothing and full. Barbara and I had made our choices early. We would build something real, and we would know what we had, and we would not mistake the balance sheet for the life. What I'd needed to know was simple. When I'd nothing left to offer, would the people I loved stay? Some did, some didn't. That's the answer most of us get, if we're honest about it. I have my grandsons on Saturday mornings now. I have my friend Leon, who still calls me for lunch even though I can no longer be useful to him professionally. I have my doctors, who are cautiously optimistic, and my screened porch, and a garden I'm learning how to keep alive. I have my life, which is mine again, which turned out to be the most valuable thing I owned. I keep thinking about the moment Garrett knocked on my door and told me to leave. He wasn't cruel about it. He was just efficient, the way people are when they've already decided something and they're only delivering the paperwork. That's what stayed with me. Not the anger, not even the hurt, the efficiency of it. The way a 64-year-old man, recently diagnosed with cancer, could be reduced to a logistical problem to be solved by Friday. I don't tell this story because I want people to feel sorry for me. I tell it because I think most of us at some point will face a version of that knock on the door. Someone you love will show you, plainly and without drama, exactly how much you're worth to them when you have nothing left to offer. And what you do in that moment, whether you fold or whether you stand, that's the thing that defines what comes after. What I learned about myself during those 18 months is that I had more patience than I knew. Building a business from nothing teaches you to wait. You learn to watch, to let things develop, to resist the urge to intervene before you have the full picture. I applied that same discipline to my own family, which was harder than any contract I ever negotiated. Sitting at their dinner table the night I told them about the cancer, watching Garrett change the subject in under 60 seconds, I had to choose between reacting and understanding. I chose understanding. That choice cost me something, but it gave me clarity that no reaction would have. What I learned about Annette is that she is capable of more than she showed me during those 18 months. The woman who sat at my kitchen table 61 days later, without her husband, without a lawyer, without a strategy, just a person who had done something wrong and needed to say so out loud, that woman is someone I recognize. She is her mother's daughter after all. She just needed to lose something real before she could find it again. And what I've come to understand about integrity, not as an idea, but as a daily practice, is that it's mostly invisible until it's tested. For 32 years, I built a company by keeping my word, by paying what I owed, by treating people fairly even when I didn't have to. Those weren't heroic choices. They were just choices repeated daily that added up to something. The kind of person who invokes an acceleration clause on his own daughter isn't being cruel. He's being consistent. He's saying, the rules I apply to strangers, I apply to family too. That's not punishment. That's just what it looks like when a person means what they've always said. Theo hit another double last Saturday. I was there this time in the second row and he saw me. He waved with his whole arm the way kids do when they haven't yet learned to be casual about the people they love. Cody found a beetle under the bleachers and brought it over to show me in his cupped hands, very seriously, like it was evidence of something important. Maybe it was. I drove home with the windows down. The garden needed attention and the screened porch needed a new light fixture, and I had a mentoring session Monday morning with a young woman opening a landscaping business in Decatur. My life was full in a way it hadn't been in years, not because I had more, but because what I had was entirely mine. That's the only inheritance worth leaving. Not money, not property, not the careful architecture of trusts and estate documents. The example of a person who knew what they were worth and acted accordingly even when it cost them something, even when it was hard, even when the knot came on a Tuesday and the house felt very quiet afterward. You build that over a lifetime of small, unremarkable choices, and then one day it's the only thing standing between you and the kind of life other people design for you. I chose my own.